The left's youth crisis. Why young men are walking away for the conservatives. Across Canada, and increasingly across the Western world, a profound political change is quietly underway. Young men are gravitating toward conservative ideas and parties in record numbers. This is far more than a temporary shift. It's a growing generational realignment. What's driving this? It's rooted in economic anxiety, cultural alienation, and a sense that progressive voices misunderstand or even dismiss their experiences. Conservative commentators like Wyatt Claypool argue that progressives such as Steve Boots don't grasp, or worse, exacerbate this shift. When Steve Boots released his video titled, "Why Are Young Men Voting Conservative?" he approached the subject like a medical diagnosis, not a genuine investigation. He began by stating he wouldn't coddle young men or offer them excuses, setting a tone that painted their choices as flawed. Instead of asking what's motivating their political leanings, he seemed intent on explaining why they were mistaken, rigidly moralizing instead of empathizing. This approach is telling, says Wyatt. The left is less interested in listening than in correcting. Young men are drawn to conservative themes, personal responsibility, financial independence, self-reliance, but when progressives critique those values as threats or regressions, it only pushes them further away. The conversation becomes not about ideas but about who's right, and this constant barracking deters genuine dialogue. A key example is Steve's criticism of traditional values and masculinity. He mentions online personalities like Jordan Peterson or Joe Rogan as part of the problem, men drawn to structure, hierarchy, and meaning. But for many young men, these figures offer a sense of purpose in a world that often feels chaotic. They don't want to be told their concerns are toxic. They want to be heard and empowered. Steve also accuses conservatives of embracing authoritarianism, citing polls suggesting a quarter of young men support extending presidential power. But Wyatt notes this reflects frustration with stagnant politics, not a desire for authoritarianism. Young men aren't chasing dictators. They're seeking solutions and efficiency in a world that feels stalled. Statistics cited by Boots actually reveal something else. He points out that 26% of men under 35 believe that if a man stays home to care for kids, he's less of a man, and only 41% of young men identify as feminists. But Wyatt counters, nearly 38% of women also reject the feminist label. That's not just sexism, but a sign that modern feminism may not align with many people's values. It's about having clarity, not rejecting gender equality. Economic realities aren't overlooked in this shift. Across Canada, youth unemployment among men remains high, 15% overall, 20% among male students, with rising housing costs and soaring student debt. For them, conservative messages like tax relief, deregulation, and entrepreneurial opportunity aren't empty slogans, they're lifelines. When the left's solutions feel theoretical and inaccessible, conservative ideas offer tangible hope. The feeling that institutions, schools, universities, corporations lean overwhelmingly progressive contributes to the disconnect. In classrooms, young men are taught an ideology that often condemns traditional views as ignorant or oppressive. When walkouts, protests, and safe spaces define the discourse, conservative young men feel sidelined. It's not rebellion. It's a flight towards spaces that treat them as equals. Wyatt Claypool argues that this crisis is less about changing policy platforms and more about preserving dignity. Young men yearn for acknowledgement, that their struggles matter, that their values deserve a voice, and that being masculine or ambitious is not a moral failing. Conservatives, for their part, have tapped into this better than anyone by offering a voice of validation rather than condemnation. The moment becomes most striking when Steve Boots criticizes conservative leader Pierre Poilievre for affirming belief in two genders. To progressives, this feels exclusionary. To many young men, it reinforces a worldview they believe has been undermined. That line about gender breaks through abstract debate and triggers a visceral response. The left's inability to reconcile with that view only deepens the emotional and political divide. This isn't about young men embracing the far right or becoming reactionary. It's about them walking away from a left that no longer speaks their language. It's about cultural messaging and policy tone, contexts ignored by many on the progressive side. They see conservative leanings as a protest vote or a mistake. But young men see it as relevance. The exodus is already visible in polls and voter trends. Parties like the Conservatives, led by voices like Pierre Poilievre, receive increasing support from men under 35, much more than from progressives. That's not a blip. It's a pattern, and it's a warning for the left. Dismissal and moralizing will only further widen the gap. If the left wants to reconnect with this demographic, it must listen, not lecture. It must offer realistic solutions, not ideology. It must treat young men as partners, not problems. Otherwise, the journey toward conservative ideals won't be hindered, it will strengthen. The left's youth crisis isn't just a headline, it's a generational choice. Young men are voting with their values. And if the left can't evolve to meet them with understanding and genuine dialogue, the conservative sands will not shift anytime soon.